for this. You will pay for this.
Take your father. Take your father. Take your father.
Here and now, everything I do now makes sense. If I
I want to see everyone clap for me right now. Africa, let's go. Hey, everyone, clap, 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 clap. Clap, 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 clap. It's a worldwide clap.
Time to review the 2019 African Cup of Nations tournament that was hosted in Egypt. Unfortunately, they were eliminated during the knockout stage against South Africa. And remember last night, Algeria against Senegal, Algeria lifting it for the second time. Senegal, despite being the best ranked African country, not managing to win it under Aliou Cisse, who featured in the final as a player in 2002, and now 17 years down the line, qualifying for the final and failing to lift it as a coach. Tiras Wayaki joining us. Very good afternoon.
Afternoon.
What's good, man?
Touchline.
Touchline is good.
Touchline is good. Now that AFCON is gone, what else? Touchline.
Oh, you expected Algeria to win it last night?
Yes, I did. But I obviously expected it to be rather close, which it turned out to be. Because Algeria is not a goal-scoring side. Here's the irony. If there's any team that struggled in this tournament to score goals in open play, it was Algeria. Yes, remember, against us, Harambee Stars, they struggled to score against us until they got themselves a penalty kick. In open play, they couldn't score against us. They got themselves a penalty kick, which wasn't as clear as daylight. There was a bit of cheating involved, a street smartness. And because VAR had not been introduced in those initial stages, the referee instinctively pointed at the penalty spot, and obviously he could not now change his mind. Penalty, they scored. Then their second goal against us, Mahrez, it was a deflection. It wasn't a shot straight from Mahrez. It was a deflection. Remember, even against Nigeria, the ball deflected off Ekon's stomach. There, another deflection there. Then their second goal against Nigeria was a set-piece goal. And even that takes you back to our first game against them. You see a set piece. So there's a recurring theme here of set pieces coming from Algeria. And then last night, a deflection from, of course, the ball came off Buneja's foot. He's the one that struck it, but he's not the one who shot the ball up that high. It was a deflection. They just go to show Algeria that in life, if you create your own luck, you can be lucky. They had content to create luck, and it turned out pretty well for them.
I read from different script with Tiras, because Algeria, from where I see, they have had an excellent African Cup of Nations campaign. I think scoring, being the only country in this particular tournament that has scored more goals than the rest and conceded less. The only goal they conceded was against Ivory Coast in a game that they didn't register an outright win, of course, getting into penalty shootout. Do you read from the same script with Tiras that Algeria had a bit of luck to win it?
Wow.
I think they had an excellent campaign.
2-0 against Kenya, 1-0 against Nigeria,
3-0 against
Tanzania, 3-0 against Guinea, 1-1 against Cote d'Ivoire, 2-1 against Nigeria, then 1-0 against Senegal. It's not by fluke, by the way. I think they just knew how to take make use of their chances, and it happened. You look at especially their game versus Nigeria. Despite that AFCON deflection, I think they know how to utilize their moments, and I think that's what has won them this tournament. In that they know that sometimes you cannot play this ball against some sides. You play the ball against a side like Nigeria, they'll punish you. Play the ball against a side like Senegal. Last night we witnessed one of the most technical wins ever in the Africa Cup of Nations, in that one team went for the trophy and the other team went to play the ball, and that was the difference between Nigeria and Algeria and Senegal. In that Algeria went for the trophy, Senegal wanted to display a good game and maybe get a goal.
The two teams that got to the final were pre-tournament favorites, and I think there was no surprise side that qualified to the final, and there were no expectations from them, from football fans. Madagascar debutants tried, but they got eliminated against Tunisia, and that was an exceptional side that was taking part for the first time and really did give a convincing show against the heavyweights. But what do you make of the tournament? Do you think it lived up to the expectation of the football fans? Having been there before and watched the AFCON a few years down the line, the Senegalese, the Nigerians, the likes of Sande Olise, Nwankwo Kanu, Victor Ikpeba, Paul Ikedia featuring, and now against Cameroon. You remember that clash? I think I did that game, Super Eagles against Indomitable Lions. No fireworks, a little bit colorless, but AFCON of your days and AFCON of nowadays, what's your comparison?
It was a mixed feeling kind of AFCON. For the underdogs, and you remember before the tournament kicked off on this show, we said it's going to be an underdogs tournament. For the underdogs, it was a brilliant tournament. I mean, look at Benin, look at Madagascar. Teams that came against the actual run of play, you would not have put your money on them to do what they did. But they did it, and they just didn't do it averagely. They did it in spectacular fashion. South Africa were underdogs. It's not the South Africa of those days. They were underdogs, and they came into this tournament and eliminated the favorites, the hottest favorites, the tournament hosts, Egypt. Imagine how many guys had put money on Egypt to win. They went back home, with their tails between their legs, so to speak. But for the big boys, it was a bit of a culture shock for them. This wasn't the kind of tournament of back in the day when big names came in, they shined from day one right to the very end and won it. This is not the Nigeria of yore. These are just Eagles. They're not Super Eagles. The Super Eagles of Augustine, JJ Okocha, Kanu Nwankwo, those big names. Look at Cameroon. This is not the Cameroon of the Indomitable Lions, the Rigobert Song, Patrick Mboma,
Samuel Eto'o.
That crop of players. No, so there's been a bit of a culture shock for them, and a wake-up call that they've got to wake up. Even this Algerian side that you saw was very good in content. Their strength was that they were not conceding goals. But in terms of scoring goals, you know what North African sides are like. They don't... Their most crucial goals came off either from deflections or set pieces. But from the run of play, it's just that Guinea gave them a chance to beat them 3-0. Guinea didn't come in to fight. They lost their marbles somewhere between halftime and the second half. So even this Algerian side is not the Algerian side of 1990. Definitely, that side was very, very powerful. They could score goals. So for the big boys, they go back to the drawing board. There's no doubt about that.
Gregory, there has been argument on two fronts as far as this tournament is concerned, on whether it had quality and oomph, because the small guns like Benin and Madagascar, even Burundi, gave a convincing show. They were spectacular despite the early elimination from the tournament, while the big boys didn't replicate what we've seen them previously doing in previous editions. What are your thoughts?
First of all, I'd fault CAF for expanding the tournament to 24 teams. First of all, it did lose a little bit of spark because you find that the level of competition went down a little bit. Look at when the tournament had 16 teams. People could fight for those 16 slots. That's why sides like Kenya could take 15 years to qualify back for the tournament. Back to the tournament. Tanzania could take, I don't know, 39 years or what. So it shows you that maybe the level of competition has gone down. But then you look at this Africa Cup, when you look at the players who participated, I don't think it's like the yesteryears where we could know the Patrick Mbomas, the Samuel Eto'os. Right now, we could name a few stars.
Yes.
We had Riyad Mahrez, we had Sadio Mane, we had Mohamed Salah, we had... I'm trying to find another star, you see. So it's like all these players who came to play this tournament, or almost all of them were at the same level. That's why there were not so many memorable moments. Maybe Wilfried Zaha, who started shining in the quarterfinals. Before that, we didn't see anything from the boys. So I think it's not about the big names anymore. Right now, it's who's prepared better to face the opponent. And I think that's what happened in the 2019 edition of the Africa Cup of Nations, whereby even the sides, I cannot name the whole of the Madagascar squad, but they were very good. I can only remember someone like Lalala, I don't know, Lalana, players like
Andrea.
that. Andrea, the guy with the white dye. Those are some of the standout names that came out. So I believe that the spark went down a little bit. It's not the same tournament we used to know, but maybe it's something better for the future, because even the change of calendar makes it even worse. The season is over, and then these players are in for a very grueling competition. I think it also affected it a big deal.
And talking about the spark, how about the players who are expected to shine? Did they give account of themselves? Because we saw several heavyweights not sparkling like we've seen them do at their club level. Saido Berahino at Burundi at some time getting substituted, yet he was the captain of the team. When you go to Democratic Republic of Congo, Yannick Bolasie not getting much playing time. Several of them, and few players who are not recognized before the tournament kicked off. Kama Billiat, he featured for Kaizer Chiefs in South Africa, and now the Zimbabwean, living up to the expectation and performing very well. What has been the disconnect between players sparkling at the club level, but when it comes to national team assignments, no delivery? Lionel Messi has done that for Argentina as well, or it's just a norm?
I think the last time I was here, I said that there's a problem with the African players at the moment, that they're in for the coin. The badge doesn't matter anymore. Yes. And I think right now most players, maybe those whose contracts are running out, they're trying to renew their contracts through their agents. Players are trying to look for new clubs. Players are trying to find big money moves, and it's happening everywhere. So there's a lot of uncertainty, let's say, when they're participating in such tournaments, and I think it's affecting many players. You look at someone like Wilfried Zaha. All the talk in the tournament, even the commentators were saying that Arsenal bound Wilfried Zaha. You look at the likes of Victor Wanyama. We are not sure if he'll be at Tottenham at the start of the next season. Such players. So sometimes players don't really play to their full potential, because maybe if you get an injury right now, that big money move might not happen. And I think it happened, what we saw in the Cup of Nations, whereby players were not really committing so much. Even Mahrez won the Cup of Nations, but I didn't see the Riyad Mahrez of Manchester City.
Let's talk about officiating. Prior to the final, there was a man who was earmarked to officiate in last night's fixture, but the Cameroonian international Aliom was given the mantle. What do you make of the officiating standards? Were they impartial? And putting into focus the VR aspect, has it been used the way we've seen VR getting into use in European football?
That's a very good question, and there's probably two ways or more to look at it. The first way of looking at it is that, why didn't they introduce VAR from the get-go? Instead, this thing of introducing things in the middle of a tournament, a big tournament such as AFCON, it shows disorganization on our part. We should have introduced it from the get-go, because the standards of officiating in the group stages and the standards of officiating from when VAR was introduced, that's around the quarterfinal stage, were very different. There were a lot of draws in the group stages, a lot of draws, and a lot of decisions that could have gone for a certain team were denied. VAR would have come into place and that penalty I've just spoken of against Algeria that they were given between Harambee Stars and them, they might not have been given. So introduce these things earlier on. Enter VAR. Then there were issues. The issues were emerging from, there seems to have been lack of uniformity between the VAR officials a lot of the time, prompting a referee to come on board and watch the video for himself, then make a decision. Now, what happens when a referee watches a video of the VAR footage is that he often than not watches footage from one angle. He's not given the benefit of looking at it front,
There's no
back,
direct
and side.
involvement of the center referee to make a verdict.
He's just given what he's given, and it's one angle. One angle can be very deceptive where footage is concerned. So you look at it from one angle. You don't look at it from all sides. One angle will show you it's not a handball or it's a handball. So Tunisia were denied a clear-cut handball in the semi-final against Senegal. That was a handball, but he looked at it from the front angle. So from the front angle, you see the hand doing this, and you say, that's not a handball.
And talking about the officiating, last night's fixture also witnessed some scenario where at some point Senegalese were to be awarded a penalty that was disallowed later on after center referee Alioum confirmed via VAR. Was it a genuine penalty or?
To be honest, I think first of all this VAR thing was just a flop. Because I don't think last night's penalty, that was Alioum had made the right decision, because you can't tell me your natural position in the arm can be that because the player, to be honest, if Alioum was keen enough and the VAR could have assisted him to show him from different angles what transpired in the resultant handball, and it did not happen. We've seen the VAR deny Senegal a goal. Was it in the quarterfinal where Sadio Mane scored?
Yes.
The VAR said
offside.
Because the normal VAR we see in the Champions League, in the Bundesliga, in the Serie A, there are two the black line and the white line. I don't know what kind of VAR this one was, because it's just like a playback.
Yeah,
no line, no distinction. No distinction, so it shows you nothing. It's just a playback. It reminds me there's a time when I was commentating an NSL match at Camp Toyoyo. A player handled the ball in the box, and then the referee decided to come to the OB van to come and see the replay, and then made a decision. So it's just such a thing, in that there's no distinction. It's nothing to show. So
look at that incident where it called for intervention of center referee Alioum, the Cameroonian international, to go to the VAR box and confirm whether it was a genuine penalty. Of course, the Senegalese had started rejoicing, thinking that they would be awarded, but finally it was otherwise.
It was otherwise, and I think it's one of the flaws that we've witnessed in the tournament. I think if they want to start using the VAR in the continent, they should start with the CHAN that is coming up. Make sure that all referees are conversant with the technology, so that in future, when they still want to use the technology, because the FIFA has embraced it, then we have a very good system that will not have these flaws that we've witnessed from the quarterfinal stages of the Africa Cup of Nations.
That looked like a handball from this angle. First impression, handball from this angle. But obviously the ref was given, I mean, you should have all angles. Look at it from all angles. Then you make a fair and firm decision.
And another aspect that we're going to speak about is, the media coverage of this particular tournament. We've witnessed, incidents. I've seen one of the local TV journalists with our neighbors, that is at K24, saying that at some point she almost got attacked because she was mistakenly thought to be a Nigerian. That is after that outcome between Tunisia and Nigeria. North African journalists, how have they been behaving? Let's say Kenya, we won against TZ. How would I celebrate against Tanzanian scribes in a mocking way? I know it's sports, and sometimes patriotic excitement surpasses professionalism, but what's the approach in terms of celebration? I think there is accreditation where you know press officers sit in press zones.
Yeah, there's a press box.
Yeah.
But then you remember in 2017 when we played the CECAFA in March, then one of our local journalists celebrated a goal against Kenya. What happened here? He had to suffer the consequences.
I remember.
Yeah. So I think sometimes emotions overtake professionalism, and it's what is happening in what we witnessed in the Africa Cup of Nations, and it's something that I don't know. Maybe it's because we interact not more oftenly. That makes us have that vacuum. That when someone goes to cover an event, you are looked at as a stranger. And you see, they saw the K24 journalists and they thought this is a Nigerian. In that we don't know each other, and maybe. It's because of that lack of exposure. I'll take it back to our game in that most of the time we are not playing in the continental scene, and that really affects because right now we have Gor Mahia participating in the club competitions. Maybe after playing the likes of Zamalek, Esperance, we went to Morocco or somewhere. At least when these journalists travel with the team, someone knows that ABCD is there. But then if we take 15 years to show up to something, then it's difficult.
It's rare appearance.
Yeah, rare appearance is difficult.
And in terms of fun showing up at the stadium, immediately Egypt was eliminated from the tournament. There was underwhelming turn up by the fans at the stadium. But yesterday, the Cairo International Stadium, it was filled to the rafters.
Let me congratulate Kenyans. Actually,
Why?
in the group stages,
Yes.
when Harambee Stars was playing, Kenya had, at that point, if not the largest foreign contingent of fans, one of the largest. So Kenya did not fail in that respect. Egypt obviously had the largest crowd in the group stages because they were playing at home. So home fans just have to walk to the stadium or commute to the stadium and then make their way back home. So not much of a hassle. So Kenya did not put Kenya to shame. After the group stages, and even during the group stages itself, yes, turnout was very low. Egyptians tended to support their team, and once their team was out, they didn't go to the stadiums. The third and fourth playoff between Nigeria and Tunisia was virtually empty.
Senegal against Benin as well.
I mean, look at that, empty, empty, empty. It's sad that it's that way. And I remember in 1987, during the All-African Games, our government, when we hosted that event, our government put in place a lot of incentives for people to go in and watch, even if Kenya was not participating. And even the president, former President Moi, would say, let them go in free of charge. And that place would be like this. I don't know whether the Egyptians put in any incentives for Egyptians to go in and watch football.
But Tyrus, I have to disagree with you. Why should we condone freebies? Why should fans who are passionate about football just pay to go and enjoy?
There's very different ways of looking at it. I mean, why should you charge children? Children would want to go to the stadium, but they don't have money. And if their parents say, we're not going to the stadium, we're not going to the stadium, why should they be punished? Put in place incentives for children. All children, they could be your normal child or children with special needs. They'll never say no to the stadium. They'll go to the stadium and encourage them from a very early age to start taking an interest in football. That's how you start. And I remember 1987 All-African Games, we went to the final as a family. And that seed that was planted in me, look where I ended up, in sports. So you take kids from a very early age, put in place incentives for them to go and watch. They'll fill the place.
Nicholas Musonye's CECAFA Secretary General has had a continuous problem with Kenyan fans. At some point complaining when CECAFA was hosted at Nyayo National Stadium that fans will go at the nearby joint in Nairobi West to watch European football between Arsenal and West Bromwich Albion rather than going to the pitch at Nyayo to watch Kenya taking on Sudan. We've seen scenarios where several teams from abroad have visited the country. Everton was in town 2 weekends ago and Kasarani Stadium was filled to the rafters. What has been the aspect behind this? Lack of fan turnout and overwhelming turnout. Is it marketing aspect that has been brought into?
I think, first of all, I would like to you to look at the crowds that are attending the CECAFA club tournament in Rwanda.
Yes.
Be it a Rwandese side playing or not. beat who is playing who, the stadium is full. I think it all boils down to what Tyrus has said. What do you instill in let's say, especially the youth? They're the ones who, let's say, go to the stadium. But then in Kenya, we want to wait for who is coming home. 2 weeks ago, we hosted Everton at the Kasarani. It was filled to the rafters.
They went because of Theo Walcott?
They went. Most of them went because of Theo Walcott. Let's be honest, because that's the person they used to see on TV.
And especially ladies, man. A lot of them were inboxing me asking about the ticketing information of Everton. Yes. So I wondered, Theo Walcott is down.
When Kenya played Ghana, the stadium was filled to the capacity, not because Kenya was playing, because the Ayu brothers were playing, and then people thought that Asamoah Gyan was going to come. And against Ethiopia, the stadium was full. Why? Because it was free. Versus put Kenya versus Malawi at Kasarani. Or Comoros. It's only, I'll look at Wasika on the other side, Triras on the other side. Where are the other fans? Also, the aspect of marketing comes in that if we don't market our games well, then it becomes a problem to attract fans to make people love that game. And I think we lost that connect, let's say, in 2008. When we started watching more of the English Premier League and the UEFA Champions League. And that's why Nicholas Musonye complained then. I remember I was an intern then when I attended that press conference saying that Kenyans love watching football in the bars and drinking beer. It's a fact because the first game was between Kenya and Zambia, where Chamanga scored in the 80th minute, Nyayo was full, and that was the end of Kenyans attending the Sekafa tournament. That's how we even lost that tournament, because everyone was just disappointed. And I think Kenyans have also stayed away from the stadium because we've had heartbreaks for so long that just trying to make up takes a process. And maybe if we start qualifying for the Cup of Nations for the chance, Gor Mahia playing well in the continent, Bandari maybe faring on well, FC Leopards starting to pick results, maybe we'll start seeing fans trooping back to the field.
Another aspect is infrastructural development. We've all watched the AFCON that got concluded last night on TV, and we have to agree unanimously that Egypt is far way ahead in terms of their facilities, which look very well equipped. Borrowing leave for Kenya from Egypt, now that we participated, we were there, and our football administrators led by even FKF boss Nick Mwenda were there, and even the government representation in Amina Mohammed, the CS Sports, were there, and several politicians who are members of sports committee at the parliamentary level. Do you think there has to be a learning curve?
Actually, there is nothing to learn. We know. We know. We know. But it's about priorities. What's your priority as a country? Is it the next election, the next referendum, the next corruption deal? What's your vision as a country, and what's the ultimate end of that vision in terms of what goal do you expect to achieve? Kenya as a country, we say we have a vision 2030. I'll ask you, you're a journalist, what does Vision 2030 say about sports and football in particular for Kenya by 2030? No one knows, because it's not being marketed. It's not just sports, everything. Farmers are complaining, agriculture gets eroded, everything. So political now, not political. Not political. It's just common sense. We know, but our priorities lie elsewhere. We just need to have a well thought out vision on how to attain a certain goal, collective goal for our country. We say, remember, all African games, Kenya hockey, we won gold. Hockey. Today, do we have a hockey team for the country? Who's the captain? I mean, look, we went off the rails. We know what we need to do, but our priorities lie elsewhere, and that's the problem.
Greg?
I think
remember that Kenya missed out on hosting CHAN because of the country was not prepared. Yeah. They didn't have facilities in place, and it was given to another country. Now that we've interacted with countries who are established in terms of having well-equipped facilities, their infrastructural development is on another level. Do you think we can emulate on them and also do better locally?
I think it's having facilities is not planting grass at Kasarani in your stadium or
playing surface.
Yeah, on a playing surface. No. It's all about putting the having good hotels, having good roads, having good hospitals, having a proper network, Wi-Fi, things like
Yeah,
that.
true.
Good dressing rooms in the stadiums. Accessibility that's the key factor.
Accommodation
In place, just near to the near the facilities, things like that. But Kenya, when we look at stadiums, you plant grass at a first stadium, then say that, oh, we are ready to host CHAN. No, that will never happen. Someone went to Egypt, came and told me that, Greg, I think we are 50 years behind. I don't think we'll ever reach the heights Egypt has reached, because you look at let's say the Aswan Stadium. There's a main stadium, and then there are 4
Annexes.
Look at that. At Kasarani, what do we have? We have 1. And that's the best facility we have in the country. We talk about the changing rooms. Bukungu Stadium has the best changing rooms in the country. But then do they have even an annex? They don't have. What we have outside there is a market.
We have to wrap it, gentlemen, on this particular segment of, you know, the review of 2019 African Cup of Nations. But before we do, I'll give you a few seconds to state your standout moment of the tournament. What impressed you, and what was the lowest mark of the championship as well?
My standout moment, obviously, was to watch a boy I used to coach, Ayub Timbe Masika, play in this tournament. It just reminded me that, seriously speaking, if we, and he was playing for Harambee Stars, if we can start them young, from the under-7s level, under-9, under-11, that way, all the way to senior level, boys, girls, and the disabled, all of them, without any bias, give them an equal opportunity, and they go up based on meritocracy. And we put in place mechanisms for those who fall along the way to have a second chance, because at times a second chance can mean everything in a child's life. And for sure, Kenya can even qualify to the World Cup. We have so much talent. I watched you guys in your first session. The ghettos here in Nairobi and everywhere, you mentioned that. So much talent. And even in the upmarket areas, so much talent. We capitalize on that talent, we can go to the World Cup. My lowest moment is the fact that the tournament is over. Now what are we going to do? Can we have the tournament start again?
We have plenty of, you know, stuff coming up. There is CHAN qualifiers, Kenya is playing against TZ. There is English Premier
It's
League
the VAR moments, which we spoke of, so I wouldn't go back to them. The VAR moments, very dubious, very debatable.
Greg?
I think my moment of the tournament was watching Madagascar knock out DR Congo. That was,
and even beating Nigeria at the group stage.
And Andres' goal versus DR Congo, that was an amazing goal. Half volley out 40 yards. To me, that was the best. Excuse me. Yeah, the best goal I watched in the tournament. It will remain in my memories for quite a while. The lowest was against Tanzania, where we just scored, and then we were still celebrating, and boom, Samata does us the harm. So, but I believe that it was a good tournament, an experimental tournament, especially after expanding the tournament to 24 teams. And right now, it's given an opportunity to sides which could not get that chance of participating in the African showpiece to try and do something. To me, I think it has expanded the wings, and I believe that with proper organization, then maybe in the future we can see a better organized tournament. But for the VAR, I think it was a flop. It needs improvement.
It needs improvement. Review of 2019 African Cup of Nations has been the segment this particular afternoon. Saturday, a fantastic day. It is chilly, but of course we're going to continue talking about sports and the headlines that are, you know, making the rounds, both local and beyond. My name is Maxwell Wasiki. We will come with the next segment where we talk about international football transfers, you know, pre-season friendlies and teams trying to strengthen and bolster their squad ahead of European leagues kickoff. How about that? We speak in a few minutes from now. But don't go away. Of course, coming up next is the pre-season friendly highlights. Man United they defeated Leeds United by 4-0. Manchester City also won 2-0. Wolverhampton Wanderers also won. And let's take a look of how that transpired.